leadership meeting, community meeting. We've got some great art this time, and we're hoping for a little more understanding about how it happened. And I think Antonio Cuellar is going to talk a little bit from the big city of Farmersville.
Yeah,
we're going out to the studio. It's great.
Yeah.
We're going to work on our script trees next week too. So
tell us who you are.
oh crap. My name's Michael Rex, and I'm the president, unfortunately, for the Arts Consortium. Nobody else wanted the job. Donna?
No, you're a very good president.
Anyway, Antonio, you want to take over, or Sandra?
I'm going to take over.
Sandra's going to take over. She's the one that does all the work.
Now everybody keep on. Hi, I'm Sandra. I'm the administrative assistant. I'm going to talk a little less this time than I did in December, but just a couple updates. On the agenda, if you happen to grab one, just call to artists. Just a reminder, we still are working with the Messiah Farmers Market, the one that's on Saturdays over there by the courthouse here in Visalia. They give us a spot every Saturday for us to send an artist out, and they can sell their work and showcase their work to the community. So that's still available. If you want to register as an artist and have more information, just email me or hello at Arts Consortium or programs@artsconsortium.org. The other call to artists we have is our Watermark 2025-2026 art contest is now available on the website. Unfortunately, I don't have any printed out today, but it is live on the website. You can download it, fill it out. Just as a reminder, it is free to enter, and the prize still is $500, so that's a pretty good cash prize or prize for this contest. And we just want to see the best of the best. One of the requirements is it can't be older than July 2024. So yeah, get that art in. All you have to do is take a picture and send it in if you have any questions. It is all online on that form, but you can always give us a call, email us. The last reminder for me is South Valley Art Tour. Just a reminder, passports, the booklet, the travel book guide that lets you know who's participating in our event is open still for pre-orders. The deadline is February 13th, and after that, you will be able to receive a physical copy. The event still remains free since the digital map is available online the day before and during the event. So it's a good idea to have a booklet just so you don't have to keep pulling out your phone during the event. You can map out where you want to go, and maybe your cell service is not good in some areas. So it's a good keepsake, and you get to see a preview of all the artists who are participating. This year we have 33 locations or signups, which means that not in total 33 locations, but some artists do share their location, or some artists are under one roof. So we have artists in Exeter, Porterville, Three Rivers, Tulare, and Visalia. So this should be really a good South Valley Art Tour. And how much are the booklets?
They're $5, and if you order them through Eventbrite, it goes up to $7 about, and then, but if you order them here in person, they'll remain $5. I'm here in person. But that's it for me. Does anybody have any questions regarding those updates? If not, I'll be available after the meeting. You can, again, call us, come in person. We always love having people come into the gallery, and email us. And then, so now I'll hand over to Antonio, and he'll do a brief introduction.
Thank you. Does anybody not know Sandra?
Sandra's great.
Yeah. Good. Thank you very much, Sandra. Yeah, so the Arts Consortium, Sandra is one of the newer members of the Arts Consortium, and the Arts Consortium has been going through a lot of changes in the last couple of years. We've experienced quite a bit of difficulties, and I'm really thankful that our team has been able to kind of improvise and work through them. And then on the community level, we've also, we just continually just keep working to build our connections, to build our presence out in the community, to build our opportunities for artists. And we just so happen to have Antonio Cuellar here, who is really excellent at all of that. So he really is great at making people meet he doesn't just like say, hey, let's come hang out. It's like, no, like I need you to meet this person. And it's really amazing because sometimes that's all it takes to really actually get into a conversation with somebody. So he's really great at that, and he has a passion for the arts, like very few, and he's really exemplary in teaching when just outside, just talking about the glaze, how he achieved it, or how he created forms. So he's a little into depth, and that's really wonderful. So I'm really happy to have him here. And on top of all of that, he coordinated the show that you're sitting amongst, and so that's what he's here to talk to you about, and make sure that if you have any questions about the arts community or about ceramics or about any of his ideas, you do ask him. He's a wealth of knowledge. So without further ado, please, Antonio Cuellar.
Hey guys, thanks for coming. I want to first give it up to the Arts Consortium, Antonio, Sandra. I mean, amazing for this show to even happen. It was like an idea that I had in my head less than a year ago, like 8 months ago, whatever, and I was like running it by Antonio. I was like, hey, this would be a really cool idea, collaborating with local talent. A lot of my friends locally are tattoo artists, and they're extremely credible, disciplined makers of so many things, clearly. And so I said to myself, well, I personally have never collaborated with anybody in ceramics, and I felt like, I've been kind of isolated in my efforts because I'm a studio and pretty much have had my own studio since day one, and have kind of developed my body of work that way. So I said to myself, how fun would it be for me to reach out in the sense of play, like, in the sense of like a child going to a neighbor's house and knocking on the neighbor's door and saying, hey, you want to come out and play? And so that's kind of how I approached it. I called up my friends. These are all dear friends of mine, people I grew up with in Visalia, and knock on the door. Hey, you guys want to come out and play? What do you think about this idea? And they were really into it. And so essentially it was me offering my wheel throwing abilities to them. And essentially what I've been calling these are stretched canvases, porcelain canvases. So I was just stretching canvases for them. And I really wanted to be like pseudo obsolete from it, in that I just wanted their talents to be highlighted because they're so tremendous at what they do. And oftentimes the tattoo art world will be deemed almost as a craft because it is, that of a repetitive kind of, linear movement in that way. And oftentimes it's those non-linear movements that will break through into the fine art worlds. And so I wanted to kind of challenge that line between what people view as craft and what people view as art. You don't really see tattoo artists in the fine art world. There are very few that cross that line. And so I felt like that, philosophically, I felt like it challenged me in a lot of ways, as well. Not only that, we're challenging this line of fine art and craft, and the idea of these guys being so talented and disciplined in their effort in a way that I am with my medium. And I felt like, the parallels of at the end of the day, we're talking about like creation of man. A lot of stories say that the creation of man is clay, right? The body is clay, and oftentimes referred to as the vessel. So I felt like the parallels were really intriguing to me. You have the vessel, which they're working on. The ceramic vases are oftentimes termed a vessel, and it's three-dimensional, which is a lot different than working flat. When you take something, you it was just really intriguing to me. And then the idea of, like I said, the sense of play, where my own personal work is right now, is very much in the identity of play, especially amidst all the turmoil it seems like that's happening, globally right now. And it seems like a lot of the efforts towards art are very politically based and very charged with a lot of energy, which I really enjoy. But for me, I felt like, for me, my body of work right now is pretty much based as like, a Matisse quote, which is, I want my art to feel like you're sitting in a comfortable lounge chair. And so that's kind of what I'm, personally, my own body of work is going towards. And so then I felt like that reflected in this, in that, let's play together. Let's all come together in the sense of play.
Have you gotten any feedback from the artists?
Oh, everybody's excited. Everybody's so excited because, they're able to challenge themselves in a new medium, and then to see their work in a fine art gallery, which I'm assuming the majority of them haven't seen their work in a fine art gallery. It was just a joy for them on many platforms. And then, when you're really pushing the line of your medium, you're really trying to challenge it, you want to take on any challenge in the same light and same discipline. So offering them up, giving them the opportunity to challenge themselves and their skill set, they loved it.
How did you work with them on designing the glazes, which don't look like these colors when you put them on?
Yeah.
It kind of indicates, well, this color, did you have like test samples?
It was a big learning curve, and that's kind of like I was talking to Antonio. It became it started off as an idea, and you're like, oh yeah, it's all fun and play until the rubber hits the road, and then it's like, okay, now I have to instruct people who've never touched this medium on how to approach it, and so they've never touched clay ever, and so we talk about the references of like maybe the history, like for example, Jeff was the first one that brought me his design, and it was a good reference because it's a reference to an old Chinese porcelain form, and of course a dragon, you can't get any more quintessential Chinese than that. So like we were talking about with regards to shape, we were talking about how your image is going to translate around this three-dimensional object. So the dragon's over here. Oh, maybe we need to talk a little bit more volume up at the top because I want that dragon's head to be able to speak and for that tail to wrap around the right way. Because if it's a little too narrow, you're going to have to proportions change. It's not like a flat plane where you can really modify that in the grid. It's a lot different painting on three-dimensional objects.
Did you design the bases after you saw their designs, or?
Oh, it was 100% them. 100% them. Like I gave maybe a little feedback. I was like, okay, so then what are you planning on, imagery-wise? Oh, this works. Oh, maybe you may want to consider bulbusing it out. Like for Tony, his form wasn't as round when he initially brought the idea to me, and he said he was doing an octopus, and I was like, well, octopus has a lot of information. It's small, and you're really gonna have to restrict, all that's being, denoted in there, and we want to really embellish it, have it speak freely, so let's make it a little more volume-esque, so then that head can feel like it's popping out, and those subtleties when you're thinking about three-dimensionality versus a two-dimensional plane, all those things are very considered, and it's not like I'm rewriting a book or anything. Thousands of years of Chinese effort and Japanese effort have produced so many beautiful Native American forms, the way that they bulbed out their form to create, all those line work and embellish all that volume, that was all intentional, So
these guys have never worked in glaze before.
No, and then that's where things got a little more technical because I did a lot of research and I pulled up a lot of YouTubes. I got all the glaze, people who were sponsored by the glaze companies we were using because I referred them to particular brands because I knew they were consistent and such. So I just gave them as much info as I could, which took quite a bit of time for me to filter out things that I felt were important, because I really needed, like my mentor said, get to the point, get to the point. So you really distill all that information down to things that were, tangible and ready, because nobody's gonna sit there like a nerd wanting to look at these things. These are professional tattoo artists. They don't want to learn the chemistry of ceramics. So let's just render it down to its essence. and then give them all those little bullet points for them to just reference. And so that's what we did. And it was, that in itself was a task because, yeah, you're talking about a whole new medium, but we started it off with tiles. I gave them all porcelain tiles to like learn how brush worked and how it moved against everything, because they're all very similar. As you can tell, the majority of the artists work with like inks, sumi inks, or watercolors, and so those are very similar to the way that the ceramic porosity of the vessel is going to absorb the glaze. So like when you, very much like watercolor, when you put the watercolor stroke down, it dries pretty rapidly as you put it down. Same thing with the ceramic. There's not a lot of workability. The workability you're going to get is by using your shadowing, and that can be done with, you know, like colors or blacks, you know. So yeah, that was a task in itself. Getting everybody informed enough to be able to feel comfortable expressing themselves on these forms.
So you made the bases,
Yes.
and then they painted them.
Yes, with glaze, underglaze.
With what?
Underglaze?
Underglaze.
Yeah, and so the shiny part that you're seeing on the outside is called the glaze. And then underneath that is what we call the underglaze. So I threw the form that they designed the form, and then I made it. Then I fire it once, and that's called the bisque firing, and it makes it hard enough to where it can receive a water-based glaze so that it doesn't deteriorate. So then, that being said, we have the underglaze applied onto the bisque form, so that's where they come into play. They got the underglaze of which I suggested, and they purchased the colors they wanted, and they were able to just sit there at home and work and paint on their base. Then they bring the base to me, and I applied the overglaze, which is the shiny part.
And
Then I fire it.
fire again.
Yeah, to the glaze firing. Yeah, glaze firing. Like, we will be doing this show again next December, and we are going to be bringing a myriad of bases, and we're also going to be bringing a variety of mugs. We want mugs, like more tangible items to the buyer, you know, so we're going to be making items that aren't all $1,400, you know, so they'll be like a little bit more like in, you know, 200 or less, or somewhere around there, because they'll be beautiful hand-painted mugs. You know,
But with these tattoos that they would tattoo and then they put it on the base instead, or they just designed something new?
you know, that I'm sure they reference things. I can't say, I'm not specific, I don't know 100% if these were directly used as tattoos. You know, if they tattoo these on anybody, I'm assuming maybe, but I know they're definitely reference to their style of which they would be tattooing. That was something that I was very, you know, very much hoping for, is that they were really adhering to their style. You know, I really wanted to, I felt like each artist, and that's part of the reason why I chose this collective particularly, is because they all have their own style, and they're all very much professional in that style of which they tattoo and paint. So I was pretty like observant of who I wanted to work with in that way. Everybody had their, so I wanted them to really like embellish their style onto the form, not change it up and try and be a ceramic artist or anything. I wanted them to just their style to really represent the form. And so you know, that being said, like this next show where like we're talking about, they only got one color run, one underglaze painting. So I could, which we'll do tests on for the next show, where I'll fire that piece again. After they paint on it, I'll fire it again without the glaze. And then you can go back and even further layer and embellish and really build up like tonal values, if that's something they want. Like Tony Bernard, for example, just really knocked it out of the park with that proficient as you could get from any professional ceramic artist. The depth that he achieved, the layers that he achieved, all the subtleties with like his little sharks and stuff swimming around. He made little stamps out of sponge, to stamp the little hammerheads and all the stuff. I mean, like he really technically he ran the gamut with his approach from sponging to wiping, and his hand was really hot. He just got done doing a bunch of paintings for a show that he had a couple weeks before this, so like his hand was really warmed up with brush painting, so I feel like that translated into the depth. I mean, just so wonderful. For the first time using this medium, that was that piece excelled in my opinion, as they all did. But as far as like like layers and development of process, Tony no doubt I think pushed the line in other ways that people didn't,
And this is their art around it.
Yeah, behind each vase is the artist's two-dimensional work.
Oh, behind it.
And so these are like things that they may have up at their tattoo shop as like flash sales, like sales that they'll be doing like, one day, one-off kind of tattoos. And so these are, images that you find in their tattoo station oftentimes.
Can you point out Tony's art?
Oh, Tony's, all the artists, their work is directly behind them. So like Tony's art is right there. Those are his paintings.
Oh, okay.
And then Jeff's are behind his vase. And then this is John Sprague. Jeff is like one of the most well-known tattoo artists in the area, arguably, debatably the best, right? Jeff is like what I refer to as the like the head of Voltron in our area, right? So all these guys, like John trained under him. Tony didn't train under him, but he worked at Jeff's first tattoo shop, and he was one of the first tattoo shops in the area. Jeff, Old Fox, and then Tony, when Jeff opened up his shop, Tony, who went to art school and went for 2D and then became a tattoo artist, started working with Jeff, and they all learned a tremendous amount from Jeff because Jeff is just technically just brilliant. And so John was directly trained under him. Now John owns the Onus Club, which is arguably the biggest tattoo shop in this area, and they are booked day in and day out. And then Jason, phenomenal artist, he owned Electric Graffiti in Tulare, and pandemic hit, and so he had to shut down. And then after that, his family is ranchers, so he, in the off time, started working with the family business again, and then that just pretty much consumed his time. And I kind of brought him out of retirement. He hadn't really done too much, creatively since the pandemic, since closing his tattoo shop. So he did this fabulous piece, and that's a testament to how talented these guys are. I mean, after not touching a brush for like 4 years, he jumps on the horse and creates that tremendously beautiful piece. And then we have Mike and his wife Cece, and Mike works over at John's shop, and he's a fantastic tattoo artist. His wife Cece is a tremendous force in the world, tattoo world. She owns a shop in Tulare where they teach tattoo art. It's a whole beauty shop where they do a ton of different, beautiful, things that are a little out of my jurisdiction, but like tattooing the eyebrows and all kinds of, aesthetic things that are just, beautiful. And so she's like a, amazing example of pretty diverse creative, genius in my opinion. And so they're husband and wife, so they were able to, collaborate on that. And it's just like, was a very unique group of very talented individuals that are my very close friends. And so, like I said, in the sense of play, it was a real joy in that regard, building this body of work. And like I said, Helio, gosh, I come to the idea, and he's like, let's run it. And it was kind of like, I wanted to have originally I was going to make the bases bigger because I typically work work in considerably larger size forms, but we kind of had a limited amount of time, so I scaled down a little bit, make it a little more approachable. But we will have bigger ones in the next show. But like I said, Kelly was like, okay, well, it's a great idea. Well, we have this time open, or we have next year this time open. And I was like, well, I want to get this ball rolling. And so I talked to the guys. I was like, hey, you guys into it? They're like, let's run it. And so we did. And we you know, amongst our busy schedules, we're able to fit all this in, and we pulled it off. And then it just kind of gave them a little bit of motivation to want to do this next show, of which we will have more time and a little bit more information under our belt to really try and develop these services into something that, you know, just at the end of the day, I'm just that person who just constantly wants to push myself and push the abilities, and all these guys are too. So that being said, we're really going to try and not only scale up, but just develop the surface even, you know, as much as we can, you know.
So you said that you usually, what do you usually do? You make a living doing pottery?
Ceramics. I sculpt and I do, I call myself a potter, but at the end of the day, I like made a good living off of my sculpture at certain parts of my life, you know. So it's like I stopped making sculpture for quite some time, and I started focusing more on functional ware and large vases. And then now I'm at the point in my career where I'm going back to sculpture, and I'm not going to be making functional ware. I'll have only X amount of functional ware made through the course of my career. You know, I'm going to buy one more ton of clay for utilitarian products, and then after that, no more utilitarian products. And so just slowly move into like sculpture and vases again. So
What's utilitarian? No.
like restaurant ware.
Oh.
Restaurant ware. That's what I was trained in, making restaurant ware. You know, stuff for restaurants. Yeah. So
In porcelain?
whatever, porcelain or stoneware. Yeah, whatever the restaurant wanted.
I think it would be tin or I don't know, restaurant, not beautiful things like this.
Yeah, for like fine dining restaurants, you know, especially nowadays, the pulse is pretty much to have handmade dinnerware, you know, and so if you're not like, if you're into that pulse, you know, usually you're not pushing the line, you're not really pushing the line of your product.
Where have you sold that
Yeah.
dinnerware?
Well, locally I sold a lot to Greg Bartanian for Jack and Charlie's and Vintage Press. But I mean, in Santa Cruz where I was trained, we sold restaurant ware to every Bay Area restaurant and every coastal restaurant, like every big, you know, private hotels and, you know, these kind of things. Very big orders, you know. So that's my background with regards to like, you know, utilitarian items, of which, you know, I started doing functional items when I was really young. So, you know, at this, you know, point in my career, it's time for me to just kind of focus on solely things like this, pushing my own vision.
But if we go to BP, we should turn over the dish and see if your initials are on the bottom.
No, they took all those out of VP after, kind of like shortly after like COVID and all that stuff. You know, I think the demand over at VP is, it supersedes, they have pretty much a niche in this area to where they don't necessarily have to have handmade dishes because they're pretty much there's no competition, right? And they serve 400 or 500 people a day. You know, they are a tremendous force of, you know.
So what they do with all that beautiful stuff you created for them, you know?
I'm sure, you know, either took it to the house or, you know, they do a lot of catering, like private events and such, so I'm sure it's being used, but yeah, it's just, and, you know, like, every year I open up my studio and do like a wholesome annual, I call it the wholesome sale, it's an annual like holiday sale where I invite other artist friends of mine, and I make utilitarian items pretty much specifically for that. You know, I've slowly kind of been, you know, moving away from that, and now it's to the point where I'm gonna exit that stage, you know. Yeah, utilitarian items, stoneware or yeah, that being said, you know, with this show next year, we want to make, I will have some utilitarian items, and that we will have mugs, porcelain mugs, and they'll be all consistently the same shape, and then they'll all approach them in the way that, which is, I think is also going to be cool, because like with this, they tell me what they want, and I make it. But then, like, okay, now I'm going to give you guys all the same form, now let's see how you guys, you know, approach the same form, and you know, make whatever it is, imagery move around it. Because that's what's so fun about ceramics, or well, any three-dimensional, you know, paintings. It's like it moves, you know, it moves. It's not just on the wall, you know. That's interesting.
So I keep seeing you look over here, and I want to talk about this too, because this is the piece that I heard about the most while we were putting this whole thing together, and this is the piece that talked to me the most, and I mean that literally, because when Antonio Cuellar was still copying it from the film.
Yeah. So yeah, this piece, as you could tell, is a lot different than the other ones. There's no shiny glaze over the top. So John accidentally ordered the wrong material. These are underglazes that they use. John ordered an overglaze, a glaze, what we call a glaze. And so glazes, underglazes are essentially just like clay and pigments. And that's why when you put them on initially, like if you see up in the front, I didn't want to bring any of my stuff in for this show. I didn't want to bring any of my stuff in. I wanted these guys to just talk about it, but Impelio insisted since we had more space for me to bring some stuff. But in the front over here, you'll see what I also paint, and it's a big passion of mine. And so in the front over here, I have what I call an oil can tank, and that is raw underglaze. I didn't put any overglaze on it. The piece I felt didn't deserve that shiny quality. I felt like it needed to be a little cruder, a little rougher. It didn't need that gleam on it for that particular effort. And so you'll see what the underglaze looks like without any glaze. It looks very dry, chalky, you know, matte as you can get. And so an underglaze is essentially just clay and colorants, oxides. And so then that's why you put the overglaze, because you're able to make those colors pop. See, so like if you are using glaze can only take so much colorants, because glaze is not clay. Glaze is glass and colorants. And it's the glass that is making the shine, right? And so like you can only put so much metal to glass before things get nutty. You can saturate the clay with a lot of colorants, and that's why we're able to really get really pure colors that don't move inside these forms, because once you start putting glass formers in there, those colors are going to want to move, depending on what kind of glass you put, they're bound by, right? And that's what glaze is, essentially. It's just glass with colorants. Underglaze is clay with colorants. And so this was ordered a glaze, which is like, I would say 5 to 10 times harder to work with. So he ordered this really cumbersome material that you glaze, you don't decorate with, you don't paint with, you use underglaze to paint. You use glaze to squirt or spray or stuff like that.
Did you do it by mistake, or did he want it?
A mistake. He didn't know.
Can you go and put a clear glaze over that and refire it?
And if we did do that, what would happen? The glaze, the blue glaze, would likely start to bleed.
Oh.
Right? And so that's why we didn't do that. So he accidentally ordered a totally different temperature range. So these are fired into like 1900 degrees Fahrenheit. And at 1900 degrees, we're going to get considerably less shrinkage on the form, and we're going to get more vibrant colors. It is not going to be functional for flowers at that temperature, right?
You can't put flowers in there?
If we were to put flowers in there, I would recommend putting like a vessel in there with water, like a container or something. These aren't designed for flowers. They're designed for, you know, and anybody can use them however they choose.
But they're porous is what you're saying.
They're porous, yeah. They're porous, yeah.
Even with the glaze on, you would think they'd be porous when the glaze on.
Well, because that's at 1900 degrees, that's considered earthenware, and earthenware is considerably different than stoneware, so that's why you'll never have like earthenware utilitarian objects like functional items, because the porosity.
But this is porcelain though.
It is porcelain, but I didn't fire it to its peak temperature.
So what did you fire it up to this?
Same temperature, only 1900, and
But you could have fired it hotter.
yeah, see that's what this is. So this one is fired to like almost 2200 degrees Fahrenheit, which is considerably hotter than 1900. And so at temperature of which every clay has a different like temperature rating, and these clay bodies have a temperature rating for like just above 2200 degrees Fahrenheit before it would become a liquid and start to melt, right?
But that's solid then.
That is fired at cone 6 and is tremendously solid. Like that piece, because it's fired at so high temperature, I wouldn't even have to put a glaze on the inside and it wouldn't absorb water. Because the chemistry behind it becomes stone.
It's all melted.
It's melted, it's fused together, hence the term stoneware. And but porcelain is, the difference between porcelain and stoneware is that stoneware has iron-bearing properties in it, or other oxides, and that's what makes them look like rusty or gritty and sand and all these things. Porcelain is void of any oxides. It's just pure kaolin, which is a form of white clay. So there's no iron-bearing properties, which allows it to take very high temperatures. So porcelain can take higher temperature. But so this piece, he tells me like right before I'm getting ready to fire, he says, "Oh, hey man, I was just looking at my glaze compared to Mike's, because they're tattoo buddies," and he's like, "Mine says this and his says that," and I was like, "Oh, really?" And I was like, "Well, that's a totally different product," and it kind of was a shock to me initially, because I was hoping to fit them all in the same firing and do all that stuff. And so then, needless to say, I fired these at 1900, pulled them out, and then loaded this one in to be fired to 2200, like immediately after. And then by the time I, like literally an hour before the show, I'm pulling it out of the kiln with hot gloves, and with gloves, and it's hot enough to smell smoke coming off the gloves.
Oh,
It's too hot to touch, but we had to push it to get it here, and I knew we still had time to cool.
Could have started a little pedestal on fire.
Oh no, but it was still warm when I came here. Not that hot, but it was like, that's why I pulled it out so it could cool, but it was still warm and pinging. I wasn't sure how this piece was going to look, because it was deemed a celadon. And celadon glazes are typically really pale, light blue. But because it's a manufactured glaze, they will reference their own terms. And this is not a celadon. This would be considered a cobalt blue. And but the manufacturer termed it a celadon. So initially I was thinking like, oh, not knowing this glaze, it's going to be very pale and you're not going to be able to really see it. But fortunately it was a blue celadon, I believe they call it, whatever they call it. But it's ultimately a cobalt blue glaze, which worked really well. And it made the piece just sing. Every time I look at it, I keep getting more joy out of it. Because, like I said, glaze is glass with colorants. Glass is really hard to paint with. There's no water absorption in glass, so it's drying in the air. Like when he dumped his brush, when he pulled it out, it was virtually drying when he was painting it. Whereas clay is a hydrant, so it absorbs the water, right? And so you're able to work with it a little bit longer, and that's why we make the underglazes, because it gives that like creamy, movability as like a painting would, or paint would. Painting with glass is so tedious, so for him to pull that off and everything that he did, it was tremendously more cumbersome for him. Like I said, anywhere from 5 to 10 times more difficult for him to paint it with that.
So he won't do that again.
Yeah, he's like, dude, I was like, initially when he said it, I was like, dude, can you just wash it off and redo it? Yeah, and he's like, dude, I spent so many hours on that, I'm not doing that. And I was like, because like, that's like part of the maddening experience as a ceramic artist is that there's a lot of failure in our successes, you know. How many times have I had to wipe pots off or so? For me, it was like no big deal. I'm like, okay, if I didn't like it, I would wash it off and went right back to the drawing boards because those things happen in ceramics. Things break, you have to remake them, whatever happens. If got fire too fast,
Can you tell the audience a little bit about your experience making those tiles for the bridge project? And what you went through for that?
yeah, the tiles for the bridge project, which the Arts Consortium, you know, brought to my table, amazing. Thank you guys for that. Yeah, it was, you know, they came to me and they were talking about, oh, okay, let's do this, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I got that, no problem. And you know, I go to do it, and I do all the research on clay bodies and such because there's a particular thickness that they needed, and size, and water absorption. You know, 2% or less for those kind of public works, 2% or less water absorption, which is very, very little water absorption. You know, very few things on planet Earth have 2% or less. And so, that being said, I have to do all the research on the clay bodies because I know what I work with and I know how to make tiles, but at the end of the day, architectural tiles are different because they are engineered into these bridges, so we have to meet particular standards.
Well, and the size of it too.
Yeah, and in size, you know, that's the thing, clay, like big flat slabs of clay, it's cantankerous because the way it shrinks and the way it moves, you really have to observe how that's happening. And so yeah, it was a big learning curve in that because I spent a lot of time with the technicians at Laguna Ceramics, which is one of the biggest ceramics companies in the country, and I believe it is the biggest ceramics company in the country. And I got all the info and I got all the documentation on which clay body they suggested, and so I pulled the trigger and I make this thing out of the clay body, and then it comes out cracked out of the kiln. And to fire these slabs of clay, it took me, I believe, 3 or 4 days of firing, constant firing, because things that are really thick and flat take a lot of time. You have to heat up very slowly, so I believe it was like a 3 or 4 day fire. And so spent all the time firing the pieces, and they came out cracked, and I was like, well, what's the deal, you know? And so I called it Laguna Ceramics, and they're like, hey, oh yeah, well, you shouldn't use that clay body. And I'm like, you guys, I have it documented in the email. This is what you suggested to buy. Needless to say, back to the drawing boards. And those are things that we are familiar with in ceramics. Like oftentimes, you know, like if you're doing something new, you know, just like anything, you're doing a new art, doing a project, and you're not sure, be prepared for failure.
How many hours did you spend on that failure?
Oh, like tons and tons and tons. Yeah, I don't know, it's a lot because I mean, there's just a lot of effort when you're moving that amount of clay. I forgot what the mass of the slabs were, but
You had to totally redo it.
totally redo it. Yeah, totally redo it. But the next one was a success.
With different clay?
Different clay. Yeah, yeah. Once
How many tiles were there?
there were 4 tiles, and what were they like? 3 by 4, or what were they?
18 by 36. Foot and a half by 3.
A foot and a half by 3 foot? Yeah.
So which bridge is this?
The Cyclone Bridge, Carey Bridge.
Oh, so I've seen them. They've been a real.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, sculpting and all that is totally in my wheelhouse, so it wasn't anything that was super far-fetched. You know, it was really just about me learning about the clay bodies and how to you know, work that kind of density. And I, to be honest with you, was not familiar and never had done relief sculptures before. So, you know, trying to like get as much, that was another part of the criteria, is that they couldn't be over a 1/4 inch relief because they didn't want people climbing on them. Which I found a little odd because all the bricks next to it were way thicker in relief. But I was like, okay, I'll adhere to, you know, whatever we need done. So yeah, I had to try to create as much depth and render as much volume as I could within a quarter of an inch, which then, you know, you look at like a quarter or, you know, 50-cent piece or something, you're like, wow, how did they create so much volume? You can see the dimensionality of the face, and that's like, what, I don't even know, hardly a playing card thickness, you know, and so like, that's a pretty cool concept in itself that I really found fascinating is, you know, the art of relief sculptures, trying to get that volume, make it feel like it's something sculpted, but you're only got a quarter of an inch to tell that story, and so that was pretty fun and challenging, you know, really fun project, which ultimately just gives me more vision to like right now I'm working on this new body of sculpture that I'm completely envisioning, you know, life-size in public work spaces. So that project definitely gave me more insight into public works. I'm currently going to glaze another piece. I'm going to put another tile out in Lemoore Golf Course. And then I've got permission since then to do more public works things, you know, for companies as well, logos and stuff. But yeah, my next one's going to be going into Lemoore Golf Course this spring. I already have the tile made. The legendary golf coach Jerry Mercer. He's a Sanger native, and he's currently I think like 94, and he was the founder of a lot of the youth golf around here. My son and I, my family, we're all golfers, and so and my son is an avid golfer. He's 9, going to be 10 at the end of the month, and so Jerry was one of his still alive, but Jerry, you know, he hasn't been going out as much helping with the guys because his wife, who was a couple years older than him, broke her hip. And so she's healing, but you know, they were out there still hitting balls and, you know, in their late 80s and such. And so, yeah, that was a really cool project because it really gave me some insight into public works, and then, you know, yeah, currently giving me vision as to like this new body of sculpture that I'm doing, how I can scale this up to like 10, 12 foot big, you know, like how can we turn these objects that are, the one I'm making right now is 21 inches, but the idea is now circulated in my head as to, you know, how I can create these into mixed media objects that can then scale up bigger than I could ever do with just solely ceramics. So, you know, thanks to that project, it's given me an eye and given me a vision to head towards public works. So that's where where I'm gearing a lot of my vision with this new body of work is to like really make it approachable to the you know, public sector. You know, get those into big companies or big public. And the beautiful thing is about public works is that it's owned by the people. You know, like I'm an art collector. Outside of art, I everything my whole life pure art, right? So I'm an art collector, and I love like spending money on art. It's like one of my favorite things. And so you know, where was I going back?
Public art belongs to the people.
Oh yeah, and so like, you know, that being said, you know, I go and buy my art, and I'll buy it from this gallery, and nobody ever gets to see it.
You see it.
I see it, my family sees it, and unless you donate it to a museum, nobody ever gets to see it, right? And you're talking about very credible pieces of work that are deserved to see by every person on the planet because they're so beautiful. But like when it's owned by the public, everybody gets to see it. And it's not owned by a museum, it's not owned by a private collector, and people get to really embrace and make a connection with that piece every day. And I feel like that's pretty powerful, you know. So that being said, I feel like, you know, the public works is pretty powerful. And I feel like we need more of that around.
So is that going anywhere? Are we into public works?
Mark's got one going on right now.
He's doing a bridge, right? But I mean, public art, like that one person wanted to see more public art in Visalia.
Yeah.
That's
It's very slow, but we're working on it. We've been working on it for 20 years
20 years.
Well, the Arts Consortium is over counter.
Oh, yeah, there's a building, but I'm talking about, is there a place for one of these things to go somewhere, locally?
Well, at this stage, I'm just working out the prototypes, but ultimately, we got a ball rolling, quite some years ago, trying to turn this downtown Visalia into a sculpture garden. Big jury sculpture show with biannually changing sculptures, in the downtown area. Downtown has a lot going on, but Mike and I went out to Fresno and talked to them about all their public works that they have, because they have some pretty cool sculptures that they invested in the Fulton Mall and all the things that they did, really beautiful things. So we talked with them about, everything it takes to do those kind of things. Needless to say, seemed like there was a little bit of fire, there was a little bit of warmth in the fire, but it was smoldered. But
It's still smoldering.
yeah, it's still smoldering.
A rough draft of public art that we're talking with the city about. So.
Right.
In this garden, you're talking about?
No, just in general.
In general. So, but then what is happening? So, I've got a commercial property in Farmersville, right in downtown, and that's where my studio is. And one of my passions is skateboarding and building skate parks, what I call skatable sculptures. And so, the city, I know the mayor, and I know the city for quite a few years since I've owned that property, and so they know that my connection to that. So they reached out to me and said, hey, well, we're about to build a new skate park. We'd like your advice on everything we're going to do with this new skate park. And I was like, okay, let's go in there. And that started many years ago. Then COVID hit and everything started slowing down. But now we're talking about it again. They have a new city planner over there, a new city manager. They got all kinds of new stuff over there. And there's a fire, and they want to really develop the downtown area and beautify it in a way that they're pretty limited to right now, because they don't have the size. They don't have the sizable structures in the downtown area for big murals, and their 2-lane road versus a 1-lane. All these things that downtowns want to look at to try and get the traffic to pay attention to the businesses. And so that being said, let's beautify it. We're talking about a skate park, and then the next thing led to the conversation about Farmersville becoming a downtown sculpture garden. So. Well, no, I'm not saying that that's happening, but it is we are talking about it right now. I'm talking about it with the city planner, city manager, and everybody of downtown Farmersville. And it'd be a perfect fit for that, because they don't have the wall space that it takes to have murals. They don't have the cute historic downtown that like an Exeter or Exeter or Visalia have. Brick buildings, nostalgia, and that kind of stuff. They don't have any of that. So how do you beautify it? And they're running the gamut on how to do that, And then I suggested something that we started here with the idea, and it's something that they are, definitely tossing around. And I feel like it would be a very strong movement for them,
Yeah.
I really love what they've done on the bridge over 198, and I wish we could talk to Antonio all night. And you are welcome. Yes, you're definitely welcome to stick around. We're going to take one question, unless anybody else has a burning question. So we'll take Sharice's question, and then we're going to hear from Antonio how to keep up with him, how to follow him, where to find him, and then we'll keep on.
No, do you have an apprentice or do you offer apprenticeship?
When I need help, I have a local assistant that helps me. With regards to that kind of stuff, it's my vision with my pottery. I kind of always had a vision of me stopping pottery at some point, like utilitarian wares. But the vision kind of had been more along the lines of me maintaining the business, AC Ceramics, and then having my assistants then make products under the AC Ceramic line. Very much as the way I was trained. But the pool of potters locally and the demand for the utilitarian item didn't really warrant me to, I guess, take on that challenge. even prior to COVID. But the COVID really, put the nail in the coffin for quite a few businesses. And, I was gonna have more. We were getting more offers for more dinnerware sets and more restaurants prior to COVID. And then literally, you guys all know what happened. Restaurants, quite a bit of them didn't open. They didn't reopen. So that impacted the vision as far as that went. If the demand was there, then I would have just flown an assistant out, because on my property I could have had somebody staying at a little guest house that they could have stayed at. The vision was that, they stay there and then they're able to work and, kind of develop it that way. But the demand, I'm sure, is still there if I'm really willing to seek it out. But that's a whole other effort. So at this stage, that's not necessarily the apprenticeship thing is not something that I've really moved towards. But if there was someone willing and it takes a lot. That's the thing. With pottery, it's it takes so much effort. I was at the Santa Cruz Pottery that I was trained at for I think 3 years before I got paid. And I don't think people are really willing to put in that effort anymore. I'm not sure. That people are really willing to sit there and want to take the time that it takes and not get paid. Because, if you're just beginning, then you're getting paid to learn.
I know a few college pottery students that,
Yeah, at the end of the day, if you know anybody that may be interested and is competent, then, I definitely would be entertain the idea of, that, right now my assistant, Emily Byrne, she has her degree in ceramics, from Chico State, and she helps me with certain things like glazing or little things that because she's really good at figurative sculpting and doing the things that she does, but it's just everybody has their own disciplines. So, but yeah, I'd be happy to
I'm gonna check it out.
yeah, extend some kind of collaboration in that way, or I am going to start, but that is one thing that I am going to start doing, is I am going to start opening my property up to maybe 3 or 4 times a year doing a workshop, of which I would probably need some assistance at that time. I'm going to start doing firing workshops, alternative firing workshops, because my mentor invented this process called raku firing, and so I'm going to start opening up classes, workshops to raku firing and pit firing and salt glazes, and alternative firings. Which I feel like is something that could be pretty cool, because I think there's a lot of YouTube information about making and such, but firing is a whole other art form. And when we're talking about alternative firing processes like raku or salt firing or any of that kind of stuff, it's pretty esoteric. So those are things that I studied for almost a decade. So yeah, I'm pretty familiar with those kind of things. So yeah, definitely we connect, and even if you're working, I'm always open to hey, you want to come? If you're a potter, you want to learn, you come watch me when I'm throwing or something, or when I'm making something, and then you can just get information from there.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot of work to teach somebody how to make your things, and that's all good, but it's a person like me, I was very committed, so Joel knew that I wasn't just going to abandon ship. He knew I just wanted more and more, tasks to fulfill. And once I was able to, throw the rice bowl properly, then I was like, oh, okay, now let's have him make some cups. Let's have him make some bowls. Let's have him, just slowly platters. Then it gets to let's have him make the teapots now, because that's the highest level of utilitarian items.
Awesome. So how can we follow you or find you online?
Yeah, On Instagram, I'm on Evaristo Art, and Evaristo is my middle name.
Say that again?
Evaristo, Evaristo, Art, Evaristo Art, and that's my middle name. In high school, I just started signing my everything with Evaristo because I wanted to remain anonymous. Yeah, so I didn't want anybody to know that I was making the stuff, so I just started signing Evaristo so that no one knows me. I had this idea of just being the anonymous artist when I was in high school. I didn't want anybody to know me. So,
Still doing it with the show.
huh?
Still do it with the show.
I liked it. I was I grew up watching Bruce Lee movies and stuff, and he would he would like dress as a bum and like walk around and nobody would think like, oh, who's this guy? You know, it's like he's hidden. Nobody knew that he was like this amazing talent, but that was kind of like the vision. I would just like, you know, be obsolete and the medium would speak for itself, you know.
Awesome. Right on. Well, like I said, I guess last thing, just let's give it up for Antonio. Let's give it up for Antonio and Mike and Sandra. You know, it's amazing what they're doing. Absolutely. Oh, being open enough to do this kind of show that, I mean, like I said, I don't know anybody in the country who's doing stuff like this. I know that very few people, tattoo artists and decorating on vases, very few are doing it, but there are a few out there. But none are working that I know of collaboratively with an artist of my competence and artists of their caliber. So the collective like this is something that I haven't seen before, ever. So I got to give it up to Antonio for being courageous enough and you know, hospitable enough to host us, you know, to host this. And then, you know, hopefully next year in December we'll be able to give you guys like something even more powerful and something a little bit more to chew on.
Well, this is amazing, but you had to for me to really appreciate, you had to explain it.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was nice, but to explain all that went into it, oh my gosh.
Well, thank you. Well, yeah, sometimes it's just you get caught up in the making and you don't really. But thank you for that. Yeah, because that's like Antonio said, like one of my biggest positions in life, I feel like that was just granted to me in my existence is connecting dots. You know, I guess being a conduit, being a bridge, you know, a guiding light or whatever you want to call it, a point of direction. And so, yeah, connecting dots is something that I love doing, whether that's on a social level or a creative level. You know, I feel it's very powerful connecting those dots.
You did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you guys for coming and spending time.
Are there any announcements from members?
Well, I got you.
Or
Symphony. I got you a symphony flyer.
right on.
Do people know we have a symphony in town? No? We have one? No. See, I went around trying to get coupons for our new symphony things. Nobody knew we had a symphony. It's been in the box for, it's 40 years old. Anyway, they do a movie. Every October they do a movie. They play the movie, Star Wars, and they're playing the music on stage. And then the rest of it. All like this. But this is all Mozart. So it's fun. Nobody knows.
Anyone else?
Just real quick, two fun things over at Arts Consortium. Over here we have an artist call that's currently open. The theme is environment. It's our annual community show. You can hop on to artsbycelia.org. It's literally the first thing that pops up. You click on it, it's a big green button. It says environment, call for art. Secondly, we have an adult workshop on social media. If you guys want to learn how to promote yourself as an artist on social media, we have a workshop for that coming up on the 17th.
And Aaron's doing that.
Yes, Ari Reed.
Yes.
Who is?
Ari Reed is an artist that's shown at Brandon Mitchell. He's shown at Arts by Celia recently. Is Ari shown here?
He's participated in,
Yeah.
artists.
Oh, he's
Really active in the community and really great at social media and explaining how to do that. So if you've always been bewildered on what or how to show yourself on the internet, please feel free to sign up for that workshop.
Yeah, what is that?
It's Arian. He was Arian, not
Ari.
It's Aaron.
Yes.
I know I was trying to pronounce it wrong.
You can sign up on the website, artsbycelia.org, and it's just under the education tab.
Yeah, good.
Anyone else? Announcements?
pretty exciting. Anyway, thanks for coming, and we'll see you next month.
Yeah, thank you guys.
How's it going? Good. I just get an email from Stonehammer. That's me.
Okay. Oh, an email?
Well, no, one I don't know.
Oh. You're trying to go incognito?
No, so.
Here you go. Oh, yes. Yes.
Now it's happening.
Good. Yeah, I was a little nervous about their reaction. It took a while to answer too.
Yeah. That's good, because I need the time. You know, these aren't.
Well, it's different. It's like Antonio was saying, it's a whole right.
Right, so I didn't, glad I didn't have the strength to keep it, or I could have already finished them if I had to go over the shower.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, you know, so that, yeah, I really like that. Right.
Yeah, but still, that's a lot of page.
Well, thank you for that, Mark. Did you get some of that?
I did send it to her. I sent you a couple of things. So I also sent it to you on my own.
Okay.
So, look at both of them. Plugging away.
Thank you.
That didn't get recorded, did it?
Oh, was it?
Fantastic explanation. Yeah. Passion for enough here to be your father, right?
Thanks for coming. Good, thank you for coming. That's kind of like dark with them. It was just like barely the right amount.